Good afternoon. My name is Jackie, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the church document titled Renewing Our Commitment to Catholic Elementary and Secondary Schools in the Third Millennium. The initial document that they are referencing was created by the Catholic Cardinals of the United States in 1990. Within this document, they are stating their belief that the Catholic education plays a major role in our church and in our nation, that the entire Catholic community, bishops, priests, deacons, religious, and laity are all called to support the mission of Christian education, in which the gospel is proclaimed, community is centered in Christ, and service to our brothers and sisters is the norm. About 15 years later, the bishops created another document renewing their commitment to Catholic education on the basis that young people are the future leaders of our church. In order to succeed in this mission, we must strive to make Catholic institutions accessible, affordable, and available to all Catholic families, with an emphasis on those in lower income areas. Not only is it important to make Catholic schools available to those in need throughout our communities, but these schools should have administrators and educators who believe in the mission of the church as well, and are well equipped to relay that mission and instill it within our students. In order to do so, a proper understanding of the human person is necessary to guide these students into becoming moral and fulfilled individuals. As the document goes on, they start to break down the different areas that they are committing to in this revised, renewal version of the document. One of the topics that they discuss is why we value our Catholic elementary and secondary schools. It has a focus on education, and that education gives us the tools to live morally and well as the world continues to evolve and change and become more and more complex. Therefore, knowledge of the Catholic mission and of the human person is of paramount importance when developing these individuals, not just as students, but as whole persons. Despite the challenges that come and go over time, that concept still remains the same. They then go into talking about different challenges that the church faces, and one of those in particular is immigration. For them, the Cardinals, when writing this document, whether it is the 1990 version or the renewal in 2005, it was a matter of a new wave of immigrants coming into our country, which we still see, in our country today. But there's a matter of a more intense immigration policies that are now being enforced. There's a lot of discourse in the country right now about how to handle these situations and immigrants coming in and out of our country. But one quote that I found interesting, and the take that I liked that they wrote, says, "It is critical that we work with our people to erase any lines of prejudice and bias that may exist and create welcoming communities for these immigrants." That was found on page 8 in the document, which I think I like that particular quote because I think it kind of tells us how we need to look at the situation. Things are not always black and white, but we should do our best as Christians and as Catholics to welcome these people into our communities and provide them with the education that they're speaking about in this document. It also goes back to the fundamental dignity of the human person and that idea that we need to keep in mind moving forward to help us serve these immigrant families and non-immigrant families. Another issue they bring up is personnel, ensuring that teachers and administrators discussing these topics have an understanding beyond laity in order to have proper faith formation. From personal experience, you can tell a little bit of a difference between a person whose mission is to form disciples of Christ versus those who might not have a super strong faith-based background to their teaching. Not to say that those educators aren't great academic teachers and are helpful and needed in our world, But when it comes to the root of our mission in Catholic schools, it does help to have someone a little bit versed in catechism and that can relay this message that the Catholic cardinals are trying to push with faith-based content. Back then, another problem was accessibility in regards to location. Where were these schools being created and built, and for which communities? And currently, I would say that the accessibility issue is the growing wealth gap, which can hinder the opportunity for children to receive a Catholic education that focuses on teaching the whole human person. But in order to properly address a lot of these issues, we would need to analyze the financial challenges that the church faces, the ones back then and currently now. We can't keep relying on only parishes with schools and tuition that these families are expected to pay be the only means of financial resources for our schools. The document also states this will require all Catholics, including those in parishes without schools, to focus on the spirituality of stewardship, which I also think is a good quote to have in this document, because I think a lot of times people who are members of parishes that don't necessarily have schools attached to them might think that they don't have a direct tie to their money going to other organizations, other schools and other parishes, but we're all called to help push this wave of Catholic schools to all the Catholics in the communities in our area. Proper financial support from the government is needed to ensure the quality of our schools and programs, as well as proper compensation for educators and administrators. This also requires advocacy for our students and teachers for all educational programs, including federal and state. The problems that they talk about in this document are some that are still present to this day, and they talk about needing us to come together to find a solution to these issues and step back and remember what it means to be Catholic and a Christian and a human person, to help us best find a solution to fulfill our mission. With all that being said, the main reason that I chose this church document to present is the fact that I am myself a Catholic educator in elementary school, preschool, and I find myself a little surrounded by some of these issues that they speak of in the document. Not just the issues, but also the belief that young people are the future of our church and that we should be investing in them to make sure that they grow up with a solid faith-based educational background. And referencing back to the finances within the church, those still remain true, to this day. Speaking again, from personal experience, school, secondary and elementary schools, if not every year, every other year, go up in price. Tuition prices, along with the growing wealth gap, can make it hard for families to send their child, and in some cases 3 or 4 children, to our schools. So if families who have the financial means to send their children to a Catholic school are still choosing not to because of tuition, and they are choosing to send them to the local public schools, that means that there's very little hope for some of these other low-income families to be able to provide this kind of education. Families who would probably love the opportunity to have their child learning through faith-based programs can't, simply because of their financial situation. And I think we should try our best to help those families have this be a goal that is attainable for them. I myself grew up in Catholic schools from pre-K to 12th grade, and I played a major role in it's played a major role in who I am today. And I feel like it is my calling to do my part in helping educate the future of our church and the future leaders. I think this document does a great job of listing its goals for our Catholic schools, And I hope to just maybe even be a small part of that success in the future. So thank you.